Okay, what if I told you that you could drastically multiply your garden's yield this season without buying a single extra square foot of land? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating agricultural shift, a true vertical revolution. For anyone who's ever felt totally constrained by a small patio, a tiny urban backyard, or honestly just a lack of sprawling garden space, the insights we're about to unpack from recent horticultural research are going to completely change how you look at growing your own food. Now, the sheer scale of this upgrade is frankly massive. Based on extensive university extension trials, shifting from your traditional horizontal ground sprawling to vertical container training increases crop productivity per square foot by an incredible 200% to 400%. So we aren't just talking about a modest little bump in your tomato harvest. We're talking about effectively tripling or quadrupling your total yields, all within the exact same footprint. And this massive leap in efficiency, it really couldn't come at a better time. We're currently right in the middle of an unprecedented urban gardening boom. Get this, a record $79 billion is being spent nationally on lawn and garden activities, and 55% of all U.S. households are now gardening. So what's driving this? Well, it's largely a massive surge of Millennials and Gen Z growers who desperately want to cultivate their own food, but simply lack the traditional yard space to do it. To really understand why this is such a game changer, just look at the stark contrast here. Your unmanaged, sprawling crops, think things like cucumbers, melons, or those wild indeterminate tomatoes, they demand anywhere from 15 to 80 square feet of soil surface per plant. But when you switch to a vertical container setup, you're compressing that massive footprint down to just 1.5 to 3 square feet per pot. It's essentially a spatial hack that lets you reclaim up to 90% of your horizontal space. Let's move into Section 1, the science of growing up and its biological advantages. So you might be asking yourself, why exactly does growing up triple your harvest? It actually comes down to the fundamental physics and biology of plant growth. By forcing a plant into a vertical orientation, we're taking full advantage of spatial compression and unleashing these volumetric yield multipliers that your typical ground-sprawling plants just can't physically access. The absolute biggest driver here is something called PAR, or photosynthetically active radiation. When plants sprawl horizontally out on the ground, their canopies naturally overlap. They end up creating these internal shade zones where the lower leaves get zero light and essentially just become dead weight. But vertical training? That spreads your leaf canopy across a three-dimensional plane. This completely avoids those internal shade zones, maximizing optimal light absorption across the entire plant, which in turn drives continuous node development and vastly higher carbohydrate synthesis. It's like upgrading your plant's solar panels. Furthermore, elevating that canopy acts as an incredible natural defense system. Fungal pathogens like early blight or powdery mildew absolutely thrive on leaf wetness and that super high humidity you find right near the soil level. By lifting your foliage up into ambient air currents, you accelerate dew evaporation, you slash that boundary layer humidity, and you completely break the infection cycle of soil splash pathogens. Plus, as an added bonus, you isolate your precious fruit from all that dampness and those annoying crawling pests. All right, Section 2, top crop performers that are completely defying gardening rules. Now, what's really interesting here are these staggering yield multipliers. According to North Dakota State University extension trials, trellised feta yard-long beans see an incredible 700% boost in harvested pod mass compared to standard climbers. Pruned indeterminate tomatoes yield 300% more fruit per square foot than unpruned ground plants, and specialty crops like bitter gourd deliver massive economic and volume returns when you suspend them up in the air. Let's spotlight the strawberry for a second because this is huge. In traditional ground beds, you might lose up to 40% of your harvest to slugs, leather rot, and gray mold. It's so frustrating. But isolating strawberry crowns in 5 to 10-gallon vertical towers completely removes them from that damp soil. The result? Near 100% marketable fruit. It entirely eliminates the rot and pest damage that usually plague berry growers. We also see a massive advantage when contrasting bush varieties with pole varieties. Bush beans planted right in the ground will give you a single harvest flush over roughly 3 weeks, and then they're done. But vertically grown pole legumes, thriving in full sunlight and elevated safely away from soil-borne white mold, will bear continuously for 2 to 3 months. It's just a much, much smarter investment of your container real estate. I highly recommend you pause the explainer and screenshot this ultimate vertical cheat sheet. Notice specifically that second column. Not all vines are natural climbers.
Tomatoes and vining summer squash possess absolutely no tendrils. If you don't manually tie them, they will just fall over and snap. Grapes and passion fruit will happily climb on their own using their tendrils, but heavy producers like cantaloupes are going to require special cloth slings to support the fruit as it grows.
That brings us to Section 3, Rules for Success, where we talk about mastering the execution. So the absolute most crucial point is getting your soil right. Rule number 1, never ever use heavy garden topsoil in your containers. It will compact, destroy root pore space, cause oxygen deprivation, and inevitably lead to root rot. You absolutely must use a high-porosity soilless mix. Start with 60 to 70% coarse peat moss or coconut coir, and blend that with 20 to 30% perlite and composted pine bark. This guarantees moisture retention while still allowing the roots to breathe. Next up is single-stem canopy management. You cannot just let these plants grow wild up a trellis. For indeterminate tomatoes, you've got to aggressively remove those axillary suckers to maintain just 1 or 2 primary stems. For vining summer squash, strip the mature lower leaves beneath the fruiting zone to maintain that essential airflow we talked about. And as I mentioned earlier, for heavy melons, utilize individual cloth slings. Mature cantaloupes actually develop an abscission layer and will slip right off the vine and literally shatter on your patio if they aren't supported. Let's wrap up with Section 4, Preventing Mistakes and Understanding Operational Boundaries. The most dangerous unseen threat to your vertical setup is evapotranspiration. When you elevate pots off the ground, they're suddenly completely exposed to ambient air currents from all 360 degrees. This creates a physics dynamic where the potting media and that expansive plant canopy dry out incredibly fast, leading to severe internal water deficits for the plant. To put a real number on that, a single large tomato or melon vine in a vertical container can easily transpire 1 to 2 gallons of water daily when the heat climbs to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a lot of water. If your watering schedule is inconsistent, the plant panics. This rapid fluctuation is the direct cause of blossom end rot and premature fruit drop. Honestly, automated drip systems are going to be your absolute best friend here. Another major failure point is underestimating weight. A mature, wet vining plant easily weighs 30 to 50 pounds. When a summer storm rolls in, a 6-foot vertical trellis laden with wet foliage acts exactly like a boat's sail catching the wind. Those flimsy 3-foot commercial ring cages, they will immediately collapse under that pressure. You need heavy-duty, anchored cattle panels, concrete reinforcing wire, or some deep structural ballast in the pot to keep everything standing upright. Finally, a quick warning for our growers in low-latitude, high-heat areas, specifically USDA zones 9 through 11. By elevating your crops and removing that sprawling ground foliage, your fruits are no longer shaded. They become highly susceptible to microclimate sun scald. So you have to purposefully retain a selective leaf canopy during your summer pruning. Let it act as a natural parasol, shielding those developing fruit clusters from the intense solar radiation. The science here is crystal clear, and the yield multipliers are absolutely undeniable. By applying these specific techniques, a tiny footprint can truly yield a massive bounty. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. If just 2 square feet of your patio can multiply your harvest by 400%, what will you choose to grow in your vertical revolution?